Good morning, everyone. I hope that everyone is doing fine. Welcome to English lesson for grade 8. Today we are going to read an autobiography. As we all know that an autobiography is the life history of a person written by the person, him or herself. That's why we would be noticing that it's written from the first person's point of view, and we would be noticing the use of personal pronoun I as the writer narrates the events. So this text comes from the book Cider with Rosie. Cider is a drink made from fermented apples, and this is the autobiography of Laurie Lee. He's the poet and writer who was born in 1914. He was born in a steep valley in Slade in rural Gloucestershire in the west of England, where his mother struggled to look after her large family. Laurie Lee describes his first day at the village school. So the extract we are going to read is about author's first day at the village school. The village school. The village school at that time provided all the instructions we were likely to ask for. Instruction over here means education, right? It was a small stone barn divided by a wooden partition into two rooms, the infants and the big ones. So basically, that building, the school building, was not a purpose-built campus. It was actually a barn, a stone barn. As we all know, that barn is a place where we tie our animals at a farmhouse. So it was a barn, it was a stone building, and it was divided into two rooms, one for the infants and the other room was for the big ones. There was one dame teacher. As we all can see in the margin, that the dame teacher is the woman teacher in charge of the classes in the school, right? So, and perhaps a young girl assistant. So there were these two teachers, one a dame teacher and the other one was a young girl who was assistant to this in-charge teacher. Every child in the valley crowding there remained until he was 14 years old. So every child of the valley who was admitted there, they stayed in that school till that boy or girl was 14 years old. Then he was presented to the working field or factory with nothing in his head more troublesome than a jumbled list of wars and a dreamy image of the world's geography. So here you can see how beautifully the author is describing the quality of education they were getting at that school, right? So within two sentences, this is called writer's craft, that within two sentences he had given us a whole picture of the quality of the education provided in the school. That they were when they were out of the school, they didn't have enough knowledge, or they didn't have any advanced knowledge. What they had was only a jumbled list of wars and a vague idea of the world's geography. That's all they had. That's all they were taught in those 14 years. So this is called writer's craft, that telling more in very few words, right? The morning came without any warning, when my sisters surrounded me, wrapped me in scarves, tied up my bootlaces, thrust a cap on my head, and stuffed a baked potato in my pocket. "What's this?" I said. "You are starting school today?" "I ain't. I'm stopping home." Okay, we can again see in the margin that ain't is dialect for am not or are not. So the author said that I'm not going to start school. I would stay at home. "Now, come on, lol. You are a big boy now." "I ain't. You are. Boo-hoo." They picked me up bodily, kicking and bawling, and carried me up the road. So the sisters, they made him to get ready for the school, and then they picked him up and he was crying, and but they managed to carry him up the road to the school. The boys who don't go to school get put into boxes and turn into rabbits and get chopped up on Sundays, they said. So now the sisters are trying a trick over here, and they're trying to scare the boy, that the boys who don't go to school, they face these terrible circumstances. I felt this was overdoing it rather, and but it seems that author was a sharp boy, so he realized that the sisters were exaggerating it, right? They were overdoing it. But I said no more after that, and I arrived at the school just 3 feet tall and fatly wrapped in scarves. So he arrived at school, he was 3 feet tall at that time and fatly wrapped in scarves. So this paragraph would give you a very good example of descriptive writing. As we would read on, you would realize that a beautiful description of the place is given, and the way he was welcomed at school, and the author himself. So this is a very good example of descriptive writing. The playground roared like a rodeo. Now what is a rodeo? Rodeo is an exhibition or contest in which cowboys show their skill. So it was a noisy place, and the potato burned through my thigh because the sisters put the baked potato in her pocket, and it was now hurting his thigh. Old boots, ragged stockings, torn trousers and skirts went skating and skidding around me. Now over here you can see that the author didn't use the words boys and girls. He just used these metaphors over here, right, to describe the boys and girls. Old boots, ragged stockings, torn trousers and skirts. It means they were boys and girls who were as poor as he was, right? So they just went skating and skidding around me. So without using the words boys and girls, the writer gave a very beautiful description, right? Using these metaphors or the personifications, right? Personification is also a type of metaphor when you give human attributes to any non-living thing. The rabble crowded. Rabble means, the rabble closed in. Rabble over here, this rabble means the mob, the crowd, alright. I was encircled. Grit flew in my face like shrapnel. Grit is small loose particles of stone or sand. Shrapnels, fragments of bomb, shell or other objects thrown out by an explosion. Tall girls with frizzled hair and huge boys with sharp elbows began to prod me with hideous interest. And the tall girls in the school means he was just, as the writer told us earlier, that he was just 3 feet tall. So means the big boys and girls, they started to bully him. They prodded him. Prod means poke with a finger, foot or pointed object with hideous interest. Hideous means unpleasant, and they had this unpleasant interest in the writer just for the sake of bullying him. They plucked at my scarves, spun me round like a top, screwed my nose and stole my potato. So it was not a good welcome at school that day, the first day of the school. I was rescued at last by a gorgeous lady, the 16-year-old junior teacher, who boxed a few years. Okay, boxed a few years, as we can see in the margin, that it means to box a child's ears is to smack him or her, but usually a him, hard across the ears, a painful and dangerous punishment which is no longer allowed in school, right? And dried my face and led me off to the infants. I spent that first day picking holes in paper and then went home in a smoldering temper, right? So the author didn't do anything fruitful or useful. On the first day of the school, he just kept picking holes, making holes in the paper. There was nothing else to do for him over there. And when he returned home, he returned in a smoldering temper. Smoldering means denoting or showing barely expressed anger, desire, or another powerful emotion. It means he was not in a good mood. He was in a smoldering temper, a little angry, right? What's the matter, lol? Didn't we like it at school then? So the sisters, when they looked at his face, they asked him that what was wrong with him. He didn't like the school. They never gave me the present. Present? What present? They said they would give me a present. Well, now I'm sure they didn't. Alright, so the author told the sisters that they did not give him a present. And the sisters were a little surprised that which present he was talking about. So he said they didn't give me a present. Maybe this teacher promised on the first day that if he would behave nicely or sit nicely in the class, he would be given a present. They did. They said, "You are Laurie Lee, ain't you?" Right? Because he was used to be called Lol by his sisters, as we have read earlier. But now when he is in school, he was called by his proper name, Laurie Lee. So the sisters said that was the present for him. Well, you just sat there for the present. I sat there all day, but I never got it. I ain't going back there again. But the author was not satisfied with this explanation of the sisters. So he said that I sat there all day and they didn't give me a present. He was expecting a physical present or a gift. And he said that he was not going back to the school again because he wasn't given the present he was being promised. But after a week, I felt like a veteran and grew as ruthless as anyone else. So the author said that after a week in the school, he felt like a veteran. Now, a veteran is a person who has had long experience in particular field. So somebody, now the author says very beautifully, he tells us now he has become experienced at school. Means he know how to deal with all the troubles he was facing in the school. He has become experienced in facing those troubles, or dealing with those troubles. And he was become as ruthless. Ruthless means without pity, right? So he was become as cruel, ruthless, cruel as anyone else around him. Somebody had stolen my potato, so I swiped someone else's apple. So swiped, as we can see in the margins, it is colloquial for stole. Another colloquial word with the same meaning is nicked. So he said if someone stole his potato, he would steal someone else's apple, right? So without being considerate for the other person, that what would that person do? He would steal the apple or the lunch of the other kid, right? As his lunch is being stolen by the kids around him. So he didn't care for the other person. That's why he was saying, for the other child or the kid, that he had become cruel or ruthless as everyone around him. The infant room was packed with toys such as I had never seen before. So he liked the room where he was spending his day. Colored shapes and rolls of clay, stuffed birds and coloring books, also a frame of counting beads which our young teacher played like a harp. So this frame of counting beads is basically the abacus. Abacus is an instrument used in mathematical classes to teach little children counting, right? So that's why it is used for. So he was talking about that abacus, and the teacher played the junior teacher, the young teacher played it like a harp, leaning against us and guiding our wandering fingers. Again, a very beautiful metaphor over here. Description